August 18th, 1944, 3,000 feet above Trun, Normandy, France. The Hawker Typhoon shudders as squadron leader David Fairbanks banks hard left, his eyes locked on the valley below. Through the oil-streaked canopy, the pastoral French countryside spreads out like a crumpled map. But what catches his attention isn't the hedgerows or the burnt-out farmhouses. It's the column, a German SS Panzer column, stretched nearly half a mile along the road leading northeast from Trun, stationary, bumper to bumper. Panthers, Mark IVs, half-track supply trucks, fuel Bowsers, all sitting ducks in the late afternoon sun, their crews likely believing the bocage would hide them from above. They were wrong. Fairbanks, foobed to every pilot in 121 wing, keys his radio. His voice crackles through the headsets of 7 other Typhoon pilots, circling in loose formation around him. Al Sprite aircraft, this is Sprite leader. I have eyes on a static armored column, approximate to 7 vehicles, northern edge of the pocket. We're going in. There's a pause. Then his wingman, Flight Lieutenant Colin Titch Morrison, comes back, his Scottish accent tight with disbelief. Going in how, Foob? We've got altitude. Pattern bombing from here willed. No, Fairbanks cuts him off. His gloved hand tightens on the stick. We dive. 500 feet. Full salvo. All rockets at once. The radio explodes. 500. You've lost your bloody mind! The flak'll shred us before we even. Foob, that's suicide. We can't. Fairbanks doesn't respond immediately. He watches the column below, watches the way the vehicles are packed so close together that their shadows merge into a single dark stripe on the dirt road. He's been hunting Panzers for 3 weeks now, ever since the breakout from Caen. He's seen them scatter at the first sound of Merlin engines. He's watched rockets miss by meters because the bastards started moving the instant his flight began their dive. He's tallied near misses probables and the maddening uncertainty of battle damage assessment reports that read, possibly destroyed. Not today. Today, they're sitting still. Today, he has 8 Typhoons, each loaded with 8 RP-3 rockets tipped with 60-pound semi-armor piercing heads. 64 rockets total. And that column isn't going anywhere. But his pilots are right about one thing, the flak. Even from 3,000 feet, Fairbanks can see the telltale signatures of anti-aircraft positions dug in along the column's flanks. Quad-mounted 20 Nammer guns, probably a few 37 Nammer pieces. The Germans aren't idiots. They know the Typhoons own the skies over Normandy now. They know what those stubby, winged fighter bombers can do, which means that column is defended heavily. A low-altitude attack, especially one at 500 feet, slow enough to aim, long enough to fire all 8 rockets in sequence, would put them in the flak envelope for an eternity. In aviation terms, eternity is about 15 seconds, more than enough time for a well-trained gun crew to track, lead, and hose a Typhoon with high explosive shells. Fairbanks has lost 6 pilots this month. Good men, friends. He can still see Jackie Heron's Typhoon cartwheeling into the earth after a 20 nubby enamored round cooked off his starboard rocket rail. He remembers scraping Bill Thorpe's name off the duty roster after his aircraft simply disintegrated over Mortain, victim of a direct hit from an 88 Bembam. He knows exactly what he's asking, but he also knows that below him, in that stalled column, are the remains of the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army, the teeth of Hitler's war machine in France, now caught in a pocket between Falaise and Argenton. British and Canadian forces are pushing from the north, the Americans from the south. The gap is closing, and every Panzer that escapes through Trun is a Panzer that'll kill Allied soldiers in the Siegfried Line, in the Ardennes, on the road to Berlin. Fairbanks takes a breath. The oxygen tastes metallic through his mask. Sprite flight, he says, voice flat and certain. We go in low. We go in fast. We put every rocket into that column before they know we're coming. 64 rockets, 1 pass. Then we climb out and go home. Another pause. Then Morrison again. This is insane, Foob. Yes, Fairbanks replies. It probably is. He pushes the stick forward. The Typhoon's nose drops toward the earth. Form up on me. We're rolling in. The Typhoon drops like a stone. Fairbanks feels the G-force press him back into his seat as the altimeter spins counterclockwise. 800 feet, 500, 200, and a Pier Sabre engine roars. 4 cylinders hammering in a flat H configuration that makes the entire airframe vibrate. Around him, 7 other Typhoons peel off and follow, their camouflaged wings catching the sun as they angle downward in a staggered echelon. The ground rushes up. Details emerge from the pastoral blur, individual trees, the stone wall of a collapsed barn, the dark ribbon of the road, and the column. God, the column. From this angle, Fairbanks can see it clearly now. At least 30 vehicles packed nose to tail, trapped between a wooded hillside on the left and a marshy creek bed on the right. No room to maneuver. No escape routes. Perfect. 800 feet. His airspeed climbs past 350 miles per hour. The Typhoon's controls stiffen as the air thickens. He trims the aircraft, eyes flicking between the altimeter, the gun sight, and the target below. Then the flak starts. It begins as thin gray puffs at 500 feet, 37 Namen shells bursting in clusters, their detonations creating black, cord clouds that hang in the air like angry punctuation marks. Fairbanks jinks right, then left, throwing off the gunners, tracking solution. The German crews are good. They've been doing this since Poland, since France, since the steppes of Russia. They know how to lead a diving aircraft. A shell bursts 50 yards off his port wing. The concussion rattles his teeth. Sprite 3, taking fire. Christ. They're all over us! Stay in formation! Fairbanks snaps. Don't break. 1,000 feet. The quad 20 Nemim guns join in. Fairbanks can see them now. 4 barrels clustered together on wheeled mounts, swiveling to track his flight. They fire in rapid strobing bursts, pumping streams of tracer rounds into the sky. The tracers arc upward in bright orange lines, lazy, looking from a distance, but moving at nearly 3,000 feet per second. One stream passes directly in front of his canopy, so close he can see the individual rounds tumbling through the air. Behind him, Morrison's voice effoob, "We need to pull up, we need to." An explosion. Not a near miss this time. A hit. Sprite 6 is trailing smoke! Port wing. Fairbanks risks a glance in his mirror. Sprite 6, Pilot Officer Dennis Watts, 22 years old, 3 confirmed kills, is still in formation, but white smoke streams from his port rocket rail. A 20mm near round must have clipped it. If the rail breaks loose or the rockets cook off, Watts is dead. Sprite 6, can you hold her? She's... Yeah, I'm good. Staying with you. 700 feet. The flak is a curtain now, a solid wall of fire that they're diving straight through. Fairbanks' jaw clenches. Every instinct screams at him to break off, to climb, to abort. This is madness. Morrison was right. They're going to get chewed apart before they even. 600 feet. The column fills his vision. He can see individual soldiers now, tiny figures scrambling alongside the vehicles, some sprinting for the ditches, others manning the guns. A Panther tank sits at the head of the column, its long 75mm barrel angled uselessly toward the road ahead. Behind it, a Mark IV, then a half-track with canvas sides, then a fuel truck with Wehrmacht markings, then another Panther, then 550 feet. Fairbanks pulls back on the stick, leveling out. The Typhoon shudders as it transitions from dive to level flight at nearly 400 miles per hour. The G-force slams him downward, his vision graying at the edges. His thumb finds the rocket selector switch, rotating it to ALL. 8 rockets, 1 trigger pull. The gun sight reticle dances across the column. He needs to time this perfectly. Too early and the rockets will overshoot. Too late and he'll fly straight into his own explosion. A Thur-7 Bombardier shell detonates directly beneath him. The Typhoon lurches, shrapnel pinging off the belly armor. Warning lights flash on the instrument panel. Hydraulic pressure dropping, engine temperature rising. 500 feet. Level. Steady. The column is 2 seconds away. Fairbanks centers the reticle on the Panther at the head of the formation. His finger rests on the trigger. Around him, 7 other Typhoons level out in a ragged line, their rocket rails pointed forward like the quills of enormous porcupines. The 20 Nemen tracers converge on them from 3 directions. The sky is solid fire. 1 second. All Sprite aircraft. Fairbanks says, his voice preternaturally calm. Firing now. He mashes the trigger. The Typhoon convulses as all 8 RP-3 rockets ignite simultaneously. For a fraction of a second, the world turns white. The rocket motors belch flame and smoke, the sudden thrust pushing the aircraft upward. The release of 480 pounds of ordnance, making the Typhoon feel suddenly impossibly light. The rockets lance forward in a spread pattern, their sustainer motors trailing smoke. Fairbanks holds the trigger down as the last rocket clears the rail, then immediately yanks back on the stick, pulling up, climbing, desperate to gain altitude before. The first rocket hits the Panther, then the second, and third, and fourth, and then the world catches fire. The 60-pound warhead punches through the Panther's engine deck like it's made of cardboard. The explosion is instantaneous, fuel, ammunition, hydraulic fluid, all igniting in a single catastrophic bloom of orange flame that lifts the tank's turret 3 feet into the air before it crashes back down at an angle, smoke pouring from every hatch. But Fairbanks doesn't see it. He's already pulling up, the stick buried in his gut, the Typhoon clawing for altitude as the G-force crushes him into his seat. His vision tunnels. The altimeter spins, 600 feet, 700, 800. Behind him, the valley erupts. 4 rockets arrive within a 3-second window. The sound is like the world tearing in half, a rolling, overlapping thunder of detonations that merges into a single continuous roar. RP-3 rockets weren't designed for precision, they were designed for violence. Each warhead carries the explosive force of a 6-inch naval shell, and when they hit massed vehicles at point-blank range, the results are biblical. A Mark IV takes 2 rockets simultaneously. One penetrates the frontal armor, the other hits the track assembly. The tank simply disintegrates, turret blown backward, hull split open, ammunition cooking off in secondary explosions that send white, hot metal fragments scything through the air. A half-track loaded with SS Panzer grenadiers receives a direct hit on its fuel tank. The vehicle doesn't explode so much as vaporize, turning into a rolling fireball that engulfs the truck behind it. Soldiers on fire stumble from the wreckage, collapsing within seconds. A fuel Bowser, carrying perhaps 2,000 gallons of gasoline, takes a rocket through its midsection. The explosion is so massive that vehicles 50 yards away are lifted off the ground by the shockwave. Burning fuel splashes across the road, turning it into a river of fire that spreads to half a dozen other vehicles, cooking off ammunition, igniting cargo, melting tires into pools of flaming rubber. And still the rockets keep coming. Sprite 2 and 3 fire in sequence, their salvos walking through the middle of the column. Sprite 4's rockets hit a cluster of ammunition trucks. The detonation is so violent that trees 200 yards away are stripped of leaves. Sprite 5, 6, 7, and 8 pummel the rear of the formation, their rockets churning the earth into a hellscape of craters, burning metal, and shattered stone. In 90 seconds, the SS Panzer column ceases to exist. Fairbanks levels out at 2,000 feet, his hands shaking on the stick. The Typhoon's engine coughs. The hydraulic warning light is still lit, but she's flying. He's alive. He cranes his neck, looking back over his shoulder. The valley behind him is unrecognizable. What was once a road is now a corridor of flame and smoke, a chain of detonations still rippling through the column as ammunition continues to cook off. He counts at least 8 vehicles burning furiously, their hulks reduced to blackened skeletons. Another dozen are wrecked, overturned, gutted, torn apart. Smoke rises in thick black pillars that merge into a single towering column visible for miles, and the flak has stopped. The German gun crews are either dead, running, or too shocked to keep firing. The Typhoons climb unmolested through the airspace that 15 seconds ago was a death trap. Sprite leader, Sprite 2, what the hell did we just do? Morrison's voice is breathless, almost manic. Fairbanks toggles his radio, trying to find words he can't. He's flown 2 tours. He's hit tanks before, watched them burn, tallied his victories in the modest language of combat reports. But this was something else. Sprite flight, sound off, he manages. Give me damage reports. Sprite 2, minor flak damage, starboard aileron. I'm good. Sprite 3, all systems green. Sprite 4 took some hits in the tail section, but she's holding together. Sprite 5, no damage. Sprite 6, Watt's voice is tight. That smoke stopped. I think the rail just overheated. I'm operational. Sprite 7, good. Sprite 8, couple holes in the port wing. Nothing serious. Fairbanks exhales. 8 typhoons in, 8 typhoons out. They'd flown through a wall of flak at 500 feet, and nobody died. It shouldn't be possible. It isn't possible, except it just happened. I'll Sprite aircraft, form up on me. We're heading home. He banks west, toward the Allied lines, and takes one last look at the burning column below. The smoke is already visible from miles away, a black smudge against the summer sky that every other German unit in the pocket will see and understand. Nowhere is safe, not even stopped, not even dug in. The typhoons are coming. RAF Thorney Island, Hampshire, 1900 hours. The intelligence officer doesn't believe him. Flight Lieutenant Peter Chambers sits across from Fairbanks in the debriefing hut, a cigarette burning forgotten in his ashtray, his pencil hovering over the combat report form. He's read Fairbanks' initial account twice. Now he's reading it a third time, his expression somewhere between skepticism and disbelief. 27 vehicles, Chambers says slowly. Confirmed destroyed. In one pass. 27 that we could count before we left the area. Fairbanks correct. There were secondaries still cooking off. Could be more. Chambers sets down the report. Foob, I'm not doubting your honesty, but you understand how this sounds. The entire squadron's been averaging, what, 5, maybe 6 kills per mission, and you're telling me 8 aircraft just. They were stationary. Morrison cuts in. He's leaning against the wall, still in his flight suit, his face streaked with oil and sweat, bumper to bumper. We put 64 rockets into a target, rich environment from 500 feet. It wasn't skill, Pete. It was geometry, suicidal geometry. Watts adds. He's sitting on a footlocker, his hands still trembling slightly. I thought we were dead. All of us. The flak was. I've never seen flak like that. Chambers looks at Fairbanks. And you ordered this? I did. At 500 feet, full salvo. Through heavy anti-aircraft fire. Yes, that's. Chambers stops himself. He picks up his pencil, taps it against the desk. Squadron leader, with respect. That's either the bravest or the most reckless thing I've heard in this entire bloody war. Fairbanks meets his eyes. It worked. The room falls silent. Outside, the sound of Merlins and Sabres drifts across the airfield. Other squadrons returning from patrol, ground crews prepping aircraft for tomorrow's sorties. Somewhere in the distance, a voice calls out coordinates for a fuel truck. Chambers stubs out his cigarette. Right? I'll need individual statements from each pilot. Gun camera footage if we have it. And I'm flagging this for group captain review. If you're right, if this tactic is replicable. He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. Fairbanks stands, his legs unsteady. The adrenaline is wearing off now, replaced by exhaustion and the dull ache of muscles held tense for too long. Permission to dismiss my flight for chow and rest, sir. Chambers nods absently, already writing. Granted. But Foob, don't get comfortable. If High Command hears about this, they'll want you back up tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Fairbanks allows himself a thin smile. Good, he says. He walks out into the evening air. The sun is setting over the channel, painting the sky in shades of amber and red. To the east, across 100 miles of water and contested ground, the Falaise pocket is closing, and tomorrow the typhoons will return. August 19th, 1944, 05:30 hours, RAF Thorney Island. Fairbanks is awake before the orderly reaches his bunk. He's been awake for an hour actually, lying in the darkness, listening to the pre-dawn sounds of an operational airfield stirring to life, lorries rumbling, ground crews shouting, the distant cough of a Sabre engine turning over, catching, roaring into life. The orderly appears in the doorway, flashlight in hand. Squadron leader, you're wanted in. I know, Fairbanks says. He's already dressed, already lacing his boots. Operations. Yes, sir. Group captain wants the entire wing. 5 minutes. Morrison groans from the adjacent bunk. Christ, Foob. What did you do? Changed the war, Fairbanks mutters. Probably. The operations room is packed. Every squadron commander in 121 wing is present, along with flight leaders, intelligence officers, and a scramble of ground crew chiefs. At the front of the room, Group Captain Desmond Scott stands beside a large map of Normandy, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. He's holding a telegram. "Gentlemen," Scott begins without preamble. "At 1900 hours yesterday, Squadron Leader Fairbanks' flight engaged a German armored column near Trun using low-altitude rocket attack. Gun camera footage and reconnaissance photos confirm 27 vehicles destroyed." 27. In 90 seconds, a murmur runs through the room. Scott raises a hand for silence. Supreme Headquarters has reviewed the combat report. As of Euro 400 hours this morning, all Typhoon squadrons operating over the Falaise pocket are instructed to adopt similar tactics. Low altitude, full salvo, maximum aggression. He pauses, his eyes sweeping the room. The Germans are trapped. The pocket is closing. Our job, your job, is to ensure that nothing with tracks or wheels makes it out alive. He taps the map. The Falaise pocket is marked in red, a shrinking bubble of German-held territory squeezed between Canadian forces pushing south from Falaise and American forces pushing north from Argenton. The gap between them is perhaps 10 miles wide, centered on the towns of Trun and Chambois. And through that gap, the entire German 7th Army is trying to escape. Intelligence estimates 30,000 vehicles are attempting to flee east. Scott continues. Tanks, half-tracks, trucks, ambulances, horse-drawn wagons. Everything the Wehrmacht and SS have left in France. They're moving at night, hiding in the bocage during the day, and they're desperate. He looks directly at Fairbanks. "Squadron leader, you proved yesterday that desperation makes them vulnerable. Today we exploit that. Every squadron, every available aircraft. We're going to turn that pocket into a killing ground." Fairbanks feels something cold settle in his stomach. Not fear, not anymore. Something else. Certainty maybe, or inevitability. Rules of engagement. Someone asks. "Anything military is fair game," Scott replies. "Tanks, trucks, columns, concentration. You see it, you kill it. Weather is clear. Visibility unlimited. We own the sky." He folds the telegram. "First sorties launch at 06:30. That's 55 minutes. Get your pilots briefed. Get your aircraft loaded. Go to work." The room empties in a controlled rush. Fairbanks catches Morrison's eye as they head for the door. "Ready to do it again, Titch." Morrison grins, but there's no humor in it. "If we die this time, I'm haunting you." "Fair enough." Leo 64 7 hours, 2,000 feet above Trun. The sky is full of typhoons. Fairbanks has never seen this many aircraft operating in the same airspace. Flights of 4 and 8 aircraft, stacked at different altitudes, orbiting like predators over a wounded animal. 121 wing, 24 wing, 145 squadron, 263 squadron. Dozens of stubby, winged fighter bombers, each loaded with 8 rockets and 4 20mm cannons, each hunting for targets in the chaos below. And below, the chaos is magnificent. The Falaise pocket has become a 20-square-mile graveyard. The roads are clogged with vehicles, not columns anymore, but masses, endless rivers of trucks and tanks and wagons, trying to force their way through bottlenecks, through bombed-out villages, through the few remaining escape routes that haven't been cut by Allied ground forces. From altitude, it looks like someone kicked over an anthill. Vehicles spread across every road, every field, every track and trail, all flowing east, all trying to escape before the pocket closes completely. Fairbanks keys his radio. Sprite flight, Sprite leader. Target-rich environment doesn't begin to cover this. Pick your sectors and engage at will. Low and fast. Make every rocket count. Sprite 2. I have a column on the D-16. 24 vehicles. A Sprite 5. There's a concentration south of Trun. Looks like Panzers trying to regroup. Sprite 7. I'm seeing horse-drawn wagons mixed with half-tracks on the... Jesus, there's hundreds of them. All Sprite aircraft. Execute, Fairbanks orders. He rolls his Typhoon into a dive, picking his own target. A cluster of tanks stopped at a crossroads, their commanders probably arguing over which route to take, which direction offers escape. Neither, as it turns out. He repeats yesterday's maneuver. Dive to 500 feet, level out, full salvo. The flak is lighter today. The German gun crews are either dead, out of ammunition, or have abandoned their posts to flee on foot. His 8 rockets streaked downward, impacting among the tanks in a rippling line of explosions. One Panther brews up immediately. Another slews sideways, track blown off. A third simply stops, smoke pouring from its engine grill. Fairbanks pulls up, climbs, looks back. Across the pocket, the sky erupts with rocket strikes. He watches Sprite 2's salvo tear through a truck convoy, vehicles flipping end over end from the blast waves. Sprite 5 hits the Panzer concentration, overlapping explosions that merge into a single rolling fireball. Sprite 7 attacks the mixed column, rockets churning the road into a morass of burning wood, dead horses, and shattered steel. And that's just his squadron. To the north, another Typhoon flight dives on a column near Chambois. To the south, aircraft from 245 Squadron are working over a concentration near St. Lambert. Everywhere Fairbanks looks, rockets are falling, vehicles are burning, smoke is rising. The pocket isn't closing anymore. It's collapsing. August 20th, 1944, they fly 6 sorties. Fairbanks loses count of the vehicles destroyed. The gun camera footage becomes redundant. Every frame shows fire, smoke, wreckage. The intelligence officers stop trying to confirm individual kills and start estimating based on coverage areas. You hit a column of approximately 40 vehicles, probable destruction 30 plus. By sunset, the D16 road is impassable, not because of a roadblock, because it's paved with burning metal. August 21st, 1944, the Luftwaffe tries to intervene. A group of few P-190s bounces a Typhoon flight near Argenton. The Typhoons jettison their rockets and fight back. The 190s are faster, more maneuverable, but the Typhoon pilots are defending their hunting ground. 3 German fighters go down. The rest flee. They don't return. Fairbanks flies 5 sorties this day. On the 3rd, he sees a German tank commander standing on his Panther's turret, waving a white flag. Fairbanks circles once, checks for threats, then moves on. The tank isn't going anywhere. It's mired axle, deep in a field, out of fuel. Crew surrendering to the inevitable. On the 5th sortie, he runs out of rockets and makes a strafing run instead. His 20 Neman cannons chew through a line of trucks, the high, explosive shells ripping canvas covers to shreds, punching through engine blocks, shredding tires. It feels excessive. It feels necessary. It feels like the only way this ends. August 22nd, 1944. The pocket is almost closed. Canadian and American forces are less than a mile apart now, the gap shrinking by the hour. The Germans still inside are making a final, desperate push to escape, throwing everything they have left at the narrow corridor still open near Chambois. The Typhoons meet them there. Fairbanks leads a 12-aircraft formation into what will later be called the Moisey, Chambois Gap. What he finds defies description. Thousands of vehicles, literally thousands, jammed into a space perhaps 3 miles long and 1 mile wide. Tanks, trucks, staff cars, ambulances, horse-drawn artillery, soldiers on bicycles, men on foot, all surging east in a panic. Disorganized mass that has abandoned any pretense of military order. Crest almighty, Morrison whispers over the radio. There's Foob. What do we even? Everything, Fairbanks says quietly. We hit everything. They do. For the next 4 hours, Typhoons from 6 squadrons rotate through the gap, hitting the concentration in waves. Rockets, cannons, bombs. The ground becomes a landscape from hell. Craters overlapping craters, fires merging into firestorms, metal twisted into abstract sculptures of destruction. The smoke rises so thick that pilots have to navigate by instruments even in clear daylight. By evening, nothing is moving in the gap. Nothing can move. The road is buried under wreckage. August 23rd, 1944, 0800 hours. Ground level Moisey Chambois Gap. Fairbanks doesn't fly today. Instead, he rides in the back of a Canadian Army Jeep, bouncing along what used to be a road, and sees what his squadrons have done. The invitation came from a 2nd Canadian Corps intelligence officer, a major named Hendricks, who wanted the RAF pilots to witness the result first and for the record, he'd said, and because you need to see this. Fairbanks is beginning to understand why. The Jeep moves at walking pace, not because of caution, but because there's nowhere to drive. The road is buried under wreckage. Every 50 feet, another burned out vehicle blocks the path. Panthers tilted at impossible angles, their turrets blown off, trucks reduced to skeletal frames, half-tracks crushed by explosions, wagons shattered into kindling. The Canadian driver has to navigate around them, sometimes mounting the verge, sometimes reversing and finding another route entirely. And the smell, God, the smell. Fairbanks has smelled burning vehicles before, smelled cordite and aviation fuel and oil. But this is different. This is 5 days of destruction concentrated into 20 square miles. Rubber and gasoline and metal and other things. Things he doesn't want to identify. He pulls a handkerchief over his nose and mouth, but it doesn't help. Morrison sits beside him, silent. His face is pale. Watts is in the front passenger seat, staring straight ahead, saying nothing. We estimate 30 to 50,000 Germans were trapped in the pocket when it closed yesterday. Major Hendricks says from the driver's seat. His voice is professionally neutral, but Fairbanks can hear the edge beneath it. About 20,000 made it out on foot, mostly SS, who ditched their vehicles and fought their way through at night. 10,000 surrendered. The rest, he gestures at the landscape, the rest are here. They pass a Panther tank that's been hit so many times its hull looks like Swiss cheese. Beside it, a staff car with all its windows blown out. Beyond that, a cluster of trucks still smoldering. 3 days after they burned, Fairbanks sees equipment scattered everywhere. Rifles, helmets, gas masks, ammunition boxes, field packs, personal items, photographs, letters, a child's doll, inexplicably pristine among the wreckage, and bodies, not many. The burial details have been working around the clock, but enough to understand. Your squadrons alone are credited with over 340 tanks destroyed. Hendricks continues, confirmed by ground survey teams. Another 2,000 trucks, half-tracks, and other vehicles. The Americans are calling it the greatest killing ground of the war. The Germans, he pauses. The prisoners we've interviewed have another name for it. What's that? Fairbanks asks, though he's not sure he wants to know. Corridor des Toads, Hendricks replies. The corridor of death. The jeep stops. Ahead, the road simply doesn't exist anymore. It's been obliterated by overlapping bomb and rocket craters, churned into a moonscape of shattered earth and twisted metal. A Canadian engineering crew is working to clear it, using a bulldozer to push wrecked vehicles into the ditches. Fairbanks steps out of the jeep. His legs feel unsteady. He walks to the edge of the largest crater, 20 feet across, 10 feet deep, and looks in. At the bottom, half buried in dirt, is the turret of a Mark IV tank. Just the turret. The rest of the vehicle is gone, vaporized or scattered across the field. This one was yours? Hendricks says, consulting a map. Sprite flight, August 20th, second sortie. You hit a Panzer column attempting to use this road as an escape route. Fairbanks remembers that sortie. He remembers diving through scattered clouds, lining up on a column of 6 tanks, firing all 8 rockets in a 3-second salvo. He remembers the explosions, bright and sharp and satisfying through the gun camera. He remembers climbing away, already looking for the next target. He didn't remember this. Morrison appears beside him. We did this, he says quietly. It's not a question. Yes, Fairbanks replies. All of us. 6 squadrons, 80 aircraft. But we started it. That first run near Trun. We showed them it could be done. Fairbanks looks at his wingman. Morrison's face is drawn, his eyes haunted. He's thinking about what Fairbanks is thinking about. That every one of these wrecked vehicles, every crater, every burn mark is the result of a decision, a tactical innovation. A moment on August 18th when Fairbanks pushed the stick forward and dove to 500 feet instead of playing it safe. They called your firing insane, Hendricks says. He's reading from a report now, something official. That's what the preliminary intelligence summary says. Your own pilots told you it was suicide, and then you did it anyway, and it worked, and High Command made it doctrine. He looks up. In 5 days, the Typhoon wings destroyed more German armor than the entire Italian campaign. Do you understand that? More than Italy. Because of what you proved was possible. Fairbanks doesn't respond. He's watching the Canadian engineers work, watching them drag another burned out hulk from the road. Young men, barely 20, doing the grim mathematics of war. Clear the road, bury the dead, move forward, win. Squadron leader, Hendricks says, softer now. I don't know if this helps, but the analysts estimate this shortened the war. Maybe by weeks, maybe months. Every Panzer you destroyed here is a Panzer that won't be at the Siegfried line. Every SS battalion that got annihilated in this pocket is a battalion that won't be killing our boys in Belgium or Holland or Germany. He pauses. You saved lives, probably thousands of them, by taking thousands of others, Morrison says. Yes, Hendricks agrees. That's what war is. August 25th, 1944. RAF Thorney Island. The squadron is stood down for 48 hours. Mandatory rest. The pilots need it. Most have flown 30 or 40 sorties in a week, more than some flew in a month during the Battle of Britain. The ground crews need it even more. They've been working 20-hour days, loading rockets, patching flak damage, keeping the Typhoons flying. Fairbanks sits in the officer's mess, a glass of whiskey in front of him, untouched. Around him, pilots from other squadrons are celebrating. The Falaise pocket is closed. The German 7th Army has been destroyed. Paris will be liberated within days. The war in France is effectively over. It feels like winning. It feels like something else, too. Morrison drops into the chair across from him. They're putting you in for a decoration, DFC, probably. Maybe a DSO if the group captain pushes it. Fairbanks shrugs. For what? Doing my job. For changing how the job gets done. Morrison leans forward. Foob, I've been thinking about what you said. Back in the briefing, before that first run, you said it was geometry. Stationary targets, massed firepower, optimal attack profile. Like it was just math. It was? No. Morrison shakes his head. It was a choice. You chose to go low when everyone said go high. You chose to risk 8 aircraft and 16 lives on a tactic that had never been tried. You chose to press the attack, even when the flak was tearing us apart. He pauses. That's not math, Foob. That's leadership. Or madness. Maybe both. Fairbanks finally picks up the whiskey, takes a sip. It burns. They're going to use this, you know. Morrison continues. Low-level rocket attacks. It's doctrine now. Every Typhoon squadron from here to the Rhine is going to be doing what we did at Trun. Diving to 500 feet. Full salvos, maximum violence. He meets Fairbanks' eyes. How many of them won't come back? It's the question Fairbanks has been avoiding for a week. The question that keeps him awake at night. I don't know, he admits. Fewer than if we'd kept doing it the old way. Maybe, Morrison echoes. He stands, claps Fairbanks on the shoulder. Get some sleep, Foob. We're back in the air day after tomorrow. Holland, probably. Then Belgium. Then Germany. He grins, but it's tired. War doesn't stop just because we're tired. He walks away. Fairbanks sits alone, the whiskey growing warm in his hand. Outside, the sun sets over the channel. To the east, in Normandy, the smoke from the Falaise pocket is finally beginning to clear. The roads are being rebuilt. The dead are being buried. The wreckage is being catalogued, studied, analyzed for lessons learned. And in squadrons across southern England, ground crews are loading RP-3 rockets onto Typhoons, 8 to an aircraft, preparing for tomorrow's missions, preparing to do it again. Squadron leader David Foob. Fairbanks closes his eyes and sees a valley full of fire, sees a column erased in 90 seconds, sees smoke rising like a monument to tactical innovation and calculated violence and the terrible mathematics of modern war. They called his firing insane. They were probably right, but it worked. And that, in the end, is all that war demands, that you find what works, and you do it again and again, until the enemy breaks or you do. Fairbanks finishes his whiskey, sets down the glass, and walks out into the evening air. Tomorrow, or the day after, he'll climb back into his Typhoon and do it all over again, because that's the job, because the war isn't finished, because somewhere ahead, between here and Berlin, there are more columns, more targets, more decisions to make at 500 feet with flak bursting all around and 8 rockets waiting to launch. But tonight, for just a few hours, he lets himself remember what it felt like to be a pilot who followed the rules, who played it safe, who never imagined that insanity and brilliance could occupy the same 90 seconds of sky. That pilot died on August 18, 1944, somewhere between 3,000 feet and 500 in the dive that changed everything. What came back was something else entirely, a weapon, a tactician, a man who proved that sometimes the only way forward is straight through the fire, and history, whether it remembers his name or not, will carry the lesson forward that on one summer afternoon in Normandy, 8 typhoons dove into hell and emerged with a new way to wage war. Insane, perhaps, but devastatingly, terribly effective. And in the calculus of 1944, that was all that mattered. Thanks for watching WW2 Forgotten 45 channel. If you want more untold stories from World War II, like and subscribe and hit that bell. These heroes deserve to be remembered, and you help us keep their legacy alive. See you in the next one.